Hello and welcome to Real Menopause Talk. My guest today is Nikkiey Stott, founder of Warrior Babe and bodybuilding competitor and athlete. This is an episode for everyone. Nikkiey is so incredibly aligned with our philosophy here at Real Menopause Talk that it felt like a perfect match to have her as a guest. We cover strength training for building lean muscle, boosting metabolism and improving bone density. We talk about diet culture, overcoming fears around the gym or bulking up, and nourishing your body to balance hormones, achieve your fitness goals, and boost your overall health to feel great. So, without further ado, let's ditch the old concepts and get straight to the wins. Nikkiey, it is really lovely to meet you. Thank you very much for joining me today. Would you like to start by telling everybody a little bit about yourself, maybe your background, your family, where you grew up, and how you came to do what you're doing now?
Sure. Yeah. Hattie, thank you so much for having me on the podcast. I'm excited to provide value to all your listeners. So where I grew up in a small town in Westchester, Pennsylvania. I still am about 15 minutes outside of that location. My family, I grew up in a divorced family. So my parents divorced when I was 4 years old, and I lived about 50-50 split custody growing up through middle school and high school. And then I started to live with my dad high school and on until I started to be on my own at 19 years old. Literally, my dad just put everything in my name, and he was like, "Good luck, go figure it out." In some ways, I appreciated that. And I grew up playing sports. I think that was my outlet with the kind of rocky family situation that I grew up in. I played field hockey, basketball. I ran track, and I fell in love with the aspect of sports, competitive nature, and I loved the team. I loved being with the team. I was a captain on the team when I was in my sophomore year for field hockey, and then I was a captain for track in my senior year. So I love that morale. But following high school, we all experience this lull where you don't have your coach to support you. You don't have your team to back you up. You don't have the consistency of practices every single day and games to look forward to. And I fell into this 4 years of drinking, partying, when you turn 21, you're living the college lifestyle, and everything that I had experienced kind of went out the door, and I didn't feel like I was myself. So come 25 years old, I was going through a breakup at this point, and I felt that I needed to find myself again. And of course, I went to what I felt like I had success in, which was sports, and went back to figuring out how to work out and strength train and get into that world. And so in 2015, I got back into the gym. I was a New Year's resolution baby. And I decided to do my first bodybuilding competition. And to keep the story short, I went on to compete in 3 shows over the course of 3 years. I took first place in all of my shows. I went pro, I beat the pros, and then I retired undefeated. And at that point, I was like, okay, I kind of figured this out. It was my own experiment throughout these years. And I knew that there was women struggling with this same concept of how do I get started? What do I eat? What do I do? How do I get a body that I love and feel good in? And at that point, I was like, I need to spread my message and share my wealth of knowledge that I've learned. And that's where Alpha Female Fitness actually at the time was born. But I got a cease and desist. I had to rebrand to Warrior Babe in 2018. And that's where Warrior Babe was born.
Amazing story. And the fact that you've come from sport and then gone back to it is really lovely. And I'm sure will resonate with many people. The fact that you had that in the beginning was such a positive, and as using that as an outlet rather than the myriad of other options that are available is obviously a very positive choice. Tell me about the cease and desist first, because there's a story there.
Oh man, Hattie. Yeah, it was 2018. Alpha Female Fitness was kind of just taking off. We were testing with an app. We had a community of women inside of Facebook. And I get a DM on Instagram saying, hey, you can't use this name. I own the trademark. And I was like, oh, who is this person? Like, really? And actually went in to look deeper into it. I was getting class actions on my attempted trademark, and I didn't even know what that meant at the time. And I was like, oh, something's just going wrong with the trademark. It'll figure itself out. Being naive and not understanding, being ignorant to the process.
Sure.
So once I got that DM, I was like, okay, maybe this is a little bit serious. Once I started taking it serious, and had the lawyer reach out at that point, being like, you can't use this name, somebody owns it. So we had to rebrand it at the end of 2018. And then this was when I was about to step on stage to compete in my pro show.
Wow.
So I was going through prep and rebranding the entire company at that point.
Which is exactly what you don't need in prep. You need stress-free life as far as is humanly possible. Which category were you?
I was in women's physique.
Amazing. I love the physique women. The figure physique, I know different federations have different names for them, but they are astonishing. So congratulations and winning all three shows. Amazing.
Thank
you.
And
I have to say, I love the name Warrior Babe because that resonates in so many different ways.
Thank you. Warriors rise.
Yes. First of all, given that we are predominantly talking about perimenopause, menopause, postmenopause on the show, how prepared do you feel for perimenopause?
Yeah, this is such a great question because I think that I feel so prepared for the transition. Clearly, everybody that's listening, I'm only 34 years old. How I fell into the menopause space, I love, but also wonder how it happened because I'm only 34 years old. But I think it's because I'm at BSN. I have my bachelor's in science of nursing. I have an understanding. I've done so much research, and I've helped so many women through this phase of life that I've just kind of captured the menopause space. But I personally feel so prepared for it. And I think it's largely due to my proactivity in preparing myself for that transition. And also having the supportive community that I do have around me with all of the women that have already gone through it. And our coaches that we have on our team who are so vastly educated in this space too as well. But I think it's like I've educated myself extensively about premenopause, the transition, about menopause, understanding exactly what I am most likely to expect. It helps me feel a little bit more in control and less anxious about the changes. I am prepared in terms of like a healthy lifestyle, right? I eat the right food, I exercise, I rest. I've built a strong foundation for this transition. As I tell all of the clients too as well, I'm like, you guys are about to go through menopause. If not, you're already experiencing the symptoms of perimenopause. Right now is the best time to act and be proactive before you go through it. And the women that have done that, have been proactive, experience the menopause transition to be so much easier. I've also been like, I've learned to listen to my body. So I've been able to adapt as needed. I think that learning the cues and learning how my body operates is really important when you're about to go through the transition and knowing that it gives me an ability to make any type of necessary adjustments to my diet and exercise and my self-care routines that I need to. And then my mindset, like I feel like I have a positive mindset, which is so key because a lot of women that go through this transition feel like it's like it's like the end of the world, right? It's like I can't go backwards. Like it's like I can only go forward. Now I'm trying to make changes now. So I feel like myself staying informed, staying positive, and feeling confident has prepared me for the transition moving forward. And it's just about taking like one step at a time, making the choices to support my overall health when that time comes.
I'm sure you're brilliantly prepared. A lot of what the bodybuilding community do is actually a very, very healthy lifestyle. You know, if you take prep out of it, then the foods that people tend to eat, strength training, obviously incredibly important for maintaining muscle mass, particularly in midlife and beyond. So there is a lot that really is ideal for peri to postmenopausal women. You have a lot of clients, like you've just said, who are in this transition. What do you see the most? What do they come to you with in terms of difficulties or challenges, and how do you help them overcome that?
Yeah, the babes that come to us definitely face tons of challenges. And I'm sure that your audience can totally resonate with a few that I'm going to mention. One being hormonal imbalances, weight gain. There's this new fun term in the space called menopause, which is like the belly, decreased muscle mass, mood swings. So the way that we address these specifically for our babes is through the WB4 method, which I'll talk about in a second. But one being that we're all remote. It's all through the internet. So our coaches are responsible for creating a positive interaction as soon as they meet the babe face to face through a Zoom call for their onboarding. And I always tell our coaches that they have to meet the client where they're at. Everybody is somewhere different in their journey, whether they're going through premenopause or they're going through menopause or they're postmenopause or they're not even going through any of those symptoms just yet, but they're getting ready for that transition. So I think it's really important to take an objective perspective to the client that they're speaking with and understand exactly where they're at in their journey. And then we dial it down to the WB4 methods, that being the right food, the right exercise, the right rest, and then the right coach. So one being the right food, we approach it from the understanding that we're a macronutrient based company, but we understand that women coming into Warrior Babe have no idea what macronutrients are. So we just take it one step at a time, but we try to balance their nutrition to help balance their nutrition or their hormones to help balance and manage the weight, to help boost their energy levels. So our overall focus, even though it's macronutrients, is still incorporating a nutrient dense food to support their overall health. And then the right exercise. So as spoken already, strength training. There's no other protocol that I want our coaches to give other than obviously cardiovascular routines, maybe some HIIT that's involved, but the predominant foundation of how we address our clients specifically is giving them a strength training protocol and doing progressive overload. And obviously, this is totally different where the women are at when they join us. Some of them are beginners, some of them are intermediate, some of them are more advanced. So it depends on the protocol that we're going to give them. Another one is the right rest. So, women come to us and they've been training for 6 to 7 days. They're doing boot camps, they're doing Pilates, they're doing HIIT classes. And it's just sometimes they need to understand that less is more during this phase. And that's what we like to preach. And we want them to do the right recovery, the right rest. It's crucial, and the importance of sleep and stress management and making sure that, they're getting that bucket integrated with their plan. And then having the right coach. I think it's so overwhelming online whose advice people should follow. And so we really have an extensive hiring process with our team, and only expert coaches that have upwards of 8 years in the space are able to come onto our team and give the women the exact unique needs that they need. And then one last thing outside the WB4 method is we've recently partnered with Equalife. So we give them the resources which help them to understand. Equalife is Dr. Cabral, and we do hormone testing out of the gate. I feel like this is a missing puzzle piece that we've finally nailed down. For so long, we can give nutrition protocols, we can give strength training protocols, we can help them with their mindset, we can break behaviors and create new behaviors and habits. But if the inside isn't where it needs to be, with hormones being out of balance or out of whack and cortisol through the roof, it's going to be really hard to get the external results that these clients are seeking. So on the way into Warrior Babe, they get a free metabolic panel in terms of stress, mood, and metabolism. And we're able to go into their sex hormones, their A1C, their thyroid, and so much more that's going to give us a comprehensive look to what's happening inside so that we can address their needs specifically with the right food, the right exercise, the right rest, and the right guidance that they need.
That's phenomenal. And adding in the hormone testing, I'm sure that changes everything for so many people, particularly when it comes to cortisol, which in many ways gets a bad rep. But actually, obviously, it has a very positive purpose in the right doses. Seems to be a theme of this season of the podcast is rest, though, and too much cortisol, the damage it can do in terms of aging, the stress vicious cycle that it can induce as well. So rest is absolutely critical, as you've already said, and overtraining or being too busy in life, just the understanding of rest without the guilt. What do you suggest for your babes when they resist resting? Because again, it's seen as lazy, or there's guilt, or there's always something to do, when actually taking some rest, whether it's 5 minutes or a day, can make the world of difference. And it doesn't mean necessarily lying on the sofa all day. It can take many forms. So what do you prescribe for people?
Yeah, great question. What I prescribe for people is, first, I need to understand if they are overactive in that sense. Like if they are the ones that are training 6 to 7 days a week and they want to because they are having the trouble of not, they want to stay active. I would recommend at least doing like 3 to 4 days of strength training, but the other days can be still active rest days. And you could still go outside and get 10K steps and then, or do a Pilates class, which is very light on the body. It's nice for stretching and getting the stability and the mobility down, the flexibility down. I wouldn't say you have to take, I would say taking 6 days, right? Majority of them being strength training, and they're being at rest days, but the one day, just catch up with like your kids, go do errands, make it an entire rest day. It doesn't have to be where you're laying down on the couch and doing Netflix and chill, like you mentioned with laying on the couch. Like, it doesn't have to be that sedentary. And sometimes I will just too be more like, if I need to, with the ones that need to snap out of it, like I'll be a little bit more tough love in the sense that like, if you keep doing what you're doing right now, clearly it hasn't gotten you to where you want to be. So we need to do something a little bit different. So just trust me now, believe me later. And let's incorporate what I'm trying to tell you to do. And that way in 6 to 7 months, you're actually where you want to be rather than still getting more of what you are getting right now.
Fantastic. The other thing that I love about what you do is that it's all female, all women. Is that right? So run by women for women. And I also coach weightlifting at a women's only studio, which I absolutely adore. And yes, completely inclusive podcast for everybody. And yet there is something very magical about an all women's space. Everybody tends to support one another. The encouragement is unlike anything I've found anywhere else anyway. And the conversation is just very easy and at ease. So all subjects are covered, certainly in between sets. What made you decide to make your company all female?
What made me decide to make it all female? I think it was more so because I've gone through the experience myself, and I felt like my message would resonate the most with those that were struggling in the similar sense that I was struggling in. And women are just cool. Like they're, when you find the right tribe of women that they agree with what you're saying, they want what you have accomplished, and they're willing and open to accept the changes that they have to make in order to get the results that they want. It makes for such a amazing collaborative experience, right? The ones that want to know the tips and the tricks and why to eat this way, and they're open to changing the methods that they've previously been doing. And then you see the light bulb click. It's like the best thing that could possibly ever happen in a relationship, in an engagement, when someone is feeling so stuck and you feel like you have the answers and you give them the answers, and then they take that and they go apply it and do the action, and then they get the results. And that whole journey from A to Z, I sometimes just think it's a lot easier to have conversations with women in that sense than it is with men, because men, they just feel like they have all the answers, one. But two, what I've experienced is working with women, we have the hormonal profile that we can understand what everyone is going through. We have the ups and downs, we have the emotional swings. So being able to understand where women are coming from and resonate with them, and then also be like, but here you go, here's some tips to go achieve what you want, I think is so cool. So women just rock.
Shared experience, absolutely. And the empathy that we have because we've probably gone through it ourselves, or if not, then we know somebody who has, and something very similar for sure. I still feel, certainly, so I'm 50, I grew up in the 70s, 80s, 90s, which was arguably the worst decade for women in terms of health, with heroin chic, which I understand is back. Thought that was gone a long time ago. Well, certainly in certain areas, I've heard that there are rumors of it being back. Having grown up with that, again, a lot of the women I coach, my friends, struggle or have struggled with the idea of nourishing ourselves and eating good food and plenty of it. Undereating has been a major problem for many, 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 many. So with that in mind, how do you encourage your women, your babes, to fuel themselves and their training and learn to actually care for themselves and nourish that? The idea that being strong is so much more important than being small still needs a lot of work, in my opinion. So where do you begin?
Well, one, you're 50. You look incredible. I keep seeing your arm like pop in. I'm like, look at that deltoid and that muscle. You look so good, Hattie.
You're very kind. Thank you.
Two, I feel I agree. It needs so much more work. I think, when I feel like we're 10 steps forward and then all of a sudden I see these things pop back up, or, the topic of Ozempic and going down that avenue. It's like we get 10 steps forward and then we just take 20 steps back. I'm like, how? Why? So if there's anything that I could say here and be able to spread to your audience and your listeners is we just need to ditch the outdated idea of starving ourselves to be thin. Nourishing our bodies with the right food is key to our health. Strength training is key for our long-term longevity. As Dr. Gabrielle Lyon says, muscle is the organ of longevity. So I think more around that narrative is so important to keep pressing. And I believe one day, if it's 10 years, 20 years, hopefully we're in the right space of, ditching these outdated things that just don't work and put people into a spiral, and look at food as fuel, because it's exactly what it is. It powers us. It helps us to perform at our best. It both physically and mentally. When you are eating the right things, you can go lift heavier weights. And then when you're eating the right things, you can think clear. You don't have brain fog going on. Plus, it's been noted in studies that when you have a proper nutrition, it helps with the menopausal symptoms that women experience, and lessening them so they're not as severe. Food is fuel, right? It's not the enemy. It's a vital part of our health, our organs, our cells. And if we can view that and have everyone view that as it being food as fuel, we can make better choices that support our fitness goals and our overall health. And I think this mindset shift, it will help us to create a more positive relationship with food, focusing on what we can add to our diet, not take away. Carbs aren't bad. Carbs are good. It's just the understanding of carbs that gets misinterpreted. So nourishing the body, food is fuel. Like, let's ditch these concepts that have been honestly not providing any type of solution. If we look at it objectively, like we're still doing a rabbit hole or a hamster wheel, where women are gaining on these things and then they lose the weight and then they gain it all back. It's like, let's just find balance with what we eat on a regular basis, not cut anything out, and leave it in for the sustainability of a long-term successful achievement of not just internal health and physical, mental health, but also external and physical results that we want.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. And I'm all for adding to your life, to your plate, rather than taking away and excluding carbs. If I don't have carbs in the morning, I'm actually in a bad mood. If I put carbs in, it literally makes me feel happy. So.
Hattie, I gotta say this. Somebody left the Word Babe program because I ate bagels. I'm like, okay.
But having a slight brain meltdown at that because you eat bagels?
Yeah, it's just, it's the misinformation around carbohydrates. I think There's some, it's just a hashtag make carbs great again.
Oh, yes, please, because they are good. They're essential for well-being, for energy, and for so much more as well, as are fats, as are proteins, and all the fiber, the minerals, the vitamins that can be brought in with carbohydrates as well. Yeah, the misinformation remains, but it needs to be kicked to the curb as soon as is humanly possible. I do feel that there are more of us lifting for a start, and more of us who are openly talking about how much we enjoy food and what it does for us, all the benefits, rather than it being this, I hesitate to use the word shameful, but I know it has been in the past, thing that people do. Oh my goodness, women eat. Yes, we do. We have good appetites. We are able to eat really good food. And by good food, I mean food that brings us pleasure as much as it is nutrient dense, because I don't believe any food is bad. I believe you can find the right quantities. So living exclusively off chips or chocolate cake probably won't serve you the best. But is there a place for them? Absolutely. So I do feel there are more of us talking like that. And hopefully we're passing it on to, well, you're 34, and then I'm trying to pass it on to my kids. And so all the generations coming up behind us. But I do feel it's still got a lot of work to do. Also, lifting. So yes, we're growing in numbers rapidly, which is wonderful, but I still hear the fear of getting bulky. So how do you address that one?
Yeah, I get this all of the time. Still, 8 years later. And honestly, like I look back and I'm like, I had this same thought process. I remember telling my bodybuilding coach when I first started working with him, I was like, I don't want to get bulky. I don't want to look like a man. So I totally get where this thought process is coming from. The fear of getting bulky or being intimidated too by exercises inside the gym is something that I hear all of the time too as well. But here's the truth. Lifting weights won't make you bulky. Women don't have the same levels of testosterone as men. So it's incredibly difficult to bulk up in that way. Strength training, to all of the women listening to this, is one of the best things that you can do for your body. It helps you to build lean muscle, which boosts your metabolism and helps you burn more calories even when you're not working out. Plus, to the women that are going through menopause, premenopause, postmenopause, it improves your bone density, it improves your balance, it improves your overall strength, which is especially important as you continue to age. And the more muscle you have, as I just said, the more years you can add on to your life, and the more longevity you can have by having more muscle mass. So, what I would say too to those women that are struggling with this, that have the thought of I don't want to lift, I don't want to get too bulky, or in any sense of just being fearful of the weight room, is start small. Find an activity that you enjoy doing, whether it's walking, whether it's dancing, whether it's like a beginner fitness class. And then what's most important in those aspects is like the key is to move your body in a way that feels really good for you. But at the same time, what's important here is that as you build the confidence and see some type of positive change from those little steps that you're taking, you'll start to enjoy it more. And that's where you're going to move yourself from, okay, like I've built my confidence. I think that's the most important thing is building your confidence and something you've never done before. Yep. So I remember walking into the weight room when I first started my journey, and I was like, this is very intimidating. Like all the people are looking at me, which really isn't the case. But I built the confidence by just walking into the weight room, and that, just continued to increase over time. So don't let the fear of getting too bulky or being intimidated by going into the weight room hold you back from experiencing all of the amazing benefits of working out, strength training, eating right, and then also be surrounded by the women that understand this and can support you with switching the mindset from like, I'm going to get too bulky to, I'm not going to get too bulky. There's so many amazing benefits when it comes to strength training.
And the benefits include mindset, mental health, cardiovascular health, and so much more than the immediately obvious. But you're right, walking into the gym, I mean, I remember the first time still, and I was terrified in the weights room because it was all much younger men who had taken up a lot of space. And it took me about 6 months to get comfortable in that area. But it is thinking, oh my goodness, everyone's looking at me. They're really not. They're thinking about what they're doing. They're looking at their own form. And if they do, they're probably admiring the fact that there is another woman who is lifting weights.
Yeah.
And actually, over time, I have grown to really love going into that area, and people do exchange, even if it's just a little fist bump or a compliment or there is a lot of positivity that is to be gained for sure. But I do agree as well, starting small and finding your community, which will also help with your mindset. So finally, how do you help somebody really begin from scratch?
Oh, good question. Okay. So as I said, it's like, it totally depends on where they're starting, right? So, meeting our clients where they're at. If somebody has never tracked macronutrients, or strength trained a day in their life, I'm not going to throw them protein. This is what you need to hit. Carbs is what you need to hit. Fats is what you need to hit. And I need you to go in and strength train 5 days a week, doing all these extensive exercises. That's just immediate cause for overwhelm. And then most likely that babe or that client is going to just give up in a matter of 2 weeks. So I like to start them in the nutrition realm. I like to start them just paying attention to how they are eating. What are they over the course of 7 days? Just because you signed up for the program, don't change anything as you would normally eat on a day-to-day basis. Just start tracking inside of MyFitnessPal, or even if they don't want to do an app like MyFitnessPal, get a little notebook and just start writing down all the meals that they're having. And then after the 7 days, I like to take an average of the numbers with protein, fats, and carbs and seeing where they're truly at. Typically, 90% of the time, women aren't eating enough protein. It's like, I've been joking around lately on podcasts I've been on. It's like an epidemic within the fitness space of not having enough protein, when protein is a macronutrient king when it comes to building muscle, and achieving and also just eating the right stuff will help balance the hormones inside. But also just getting the results that women want. So after the 7 days, I see that they have no problem with fats and carbs. They have the problem with the protein. So I'll just have women, usually the average I see is like 40 to 60 grams on a daily basis. And I'm just mind blown at this because that's what like dialysis patients eat on a regular basis, which is crazy to think about. So I will set a goal. Obviously, like the goal is to get them to their body weight in protein, depending on where they're at. If someone's 250 pounds, I'm not going to have them eat 250 pounds or grams of protein. I'll find a middle ground in terms of what their goal weight would be. But for just speaking, if somebody was like 150 pounds, I would want them to get to 150 grams of protein. But I'm not going to do that overnight with them, nor am I going to do that as a first indicator of a goal to achieve, because it can be very overwhelming. So I will just want them to hit at least 100 grams of protein, and then at least do that for 2 weeks, because they're going to fumble and they're going to hit some speed bumps and have to like start over and X, Y, and Z. So once we get there, really just like the first starting point is like focusing on the protein and nailing the protein down, knowing how important it is. The second thing when it comes to strength training is knowing where they're at. If they have never strength trained a day in their life, then I'm going to most likely just program some body weight exercises, and then for them to just move their body, like I just said, like start small. And then the biggest thing that I think we deal with at Warrior Babe is the mindset aspect of it. And these habits that women have accrued through the years, or the limiting beliefs that they've acquired from previous attempts of following things, or the upbringing that they had, and the narrative from their mom or from marketing, like you said, back in the 80s and 90s. And they have these thought processes of what they need to do, but it's not what they need to do. It's just what they've been told. And I need to break that, and I need to create better habits and create behavioral shifts. So I just try and assess where this human is at, take an objective perspective, and hit little like small goals that these babes can focus on for the next like 4 weeks. That's more mindset oriented. Whether it be like if they're looking at food in a bad way, okay, what is a narrative that we can change and look at food in a better way? Can we define what bad means to them? And can we rewrite that narrative? It's totally different with every woman that we approach. But in a sense, that's how I would start with somebody from ground zero, depending on where they're at. I know that was a little long-winded answer, but there's definitely different buckets that I would approach with them.
That all sounds perfectly sensible and reasonable, and unfortunately very familiar, because we're not educated in the importance of protein. So until we know, then yes, carbs and fats, particularly in the Western diet, they seem to be the vast majority of what the vast majority of women and probably men eat as well. But upping protein, it is such a change for your hormones for the positive when you increase your protein intake as well. So there are many benefits again. And Nikkiey, I have found that training, I've learnt a lot about myself and changing my mindset, my lifestyle. The food and the training go together. There's been so much. So what would be one thing that you have learnt all the way through, I suppose, your sporting life and setting up Warrior Babe and to the present day?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that I've learned, and I attribute this to the bodybuilding era that I was in, and bodybuilding is for sure a really hard sport to do. But what I've gathered from it is there was days that we're always looking for motivation. We're always looking to be motivated to go do our workout, be motivated to meal prep, be motivated to go out for a walk to achieve our 10K steps at the end of the day, whatever it may be. People are looking for motivation. And I don't think that that should be what we look for. I think what we should, because motivation is going to ebb and flow, right? Like it's going to come, it's going to go, and that's going to be a constant deterrent to you accomplishing your goals. So instead of spending so much time solely on how you feel, I would recommend, and what I have learned is to develop your self-discipline muscle and to be disciplined. So what I have learned throughout the years is that despite how I feel, despite if I don't feel like going to work out, if I don't feel like eating the right things I should have in a day, I'm disciplined enough to act despite how I feel, and to still show up in a way that's keeping all the promises that I've made for myself and for the goals I want to accomplish. So I think that that's the biggest lesson that I've learned throughout my years. And I think the biggest thing that in order to be successful, I attribute 99.9% of my success to being disciplined. I'm not always motivated. I'm disciplined.
I agree. And also, I really love that, keeping the promise that you've made to yourself. I think that's a really beautiful way of putting it.
Thank you.
Where can people find you?
Yeah, you guys can find me. I also have a podcast called The Macro Hour. Hattie, we got to get you on that one. And then you guys can also find me at Instagram at Nikkiey Stott, Instagram at Warrior Babe. And then if you guys are interested in any one-on-one coaching, warriorbabe.com.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for your time, Nikkiey. It's been lovely chatting. Honestly, I could go into so many things, and I've deliberately avoided Ozempic because that's a podcast in itself that we probably don't want to know.
I agree. Hey, thanks so much for having me on. I appreciate it.
Lovely to meet you. Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
Please do look Nikkiey up, as she has plenty to offer. And as ever, please drop me a line, hattie@realmenopausetalk.com. That's HATTY @realmenopausetalk.com. Or look me up on Instagram @realmenopausetalk and drop me a DM. I always love to hear from people with their views, opinions, questions, and so much more. Thank you for listening. I look forward to seeing you in the next episode.